They killed the power around the world. We're gonna light it back up, because this is far from over. In fact, it's only just begun. That's why we brought in you. You got the talent. Now you need the tech. Big things too far! Today, you throw grenades. Boom! Tomorrow, you'll be throwing cars. Ah! Forget dropping bombs. You're dropping buildings. Now it's time to get to work. Time to step up your boom. Oh, that's my cue. It's go time. Yeah, son. Oh yeah. Welcome to the agency.
Determination to conquer all my ambitions. Leading to this position, and so my disposition. Not seeing no limits, killing the competition. Yeah, I'm a beast. Now I'm unleashed. Ready to feast, calm and peace, not least. I think that I'm number one. Just to keep it 100. 0 to 100. So you have a opponent. Are you a beast? Are you unleashed? You ready to feast? Do you want peace? Not the least. Do you think you're number one? Can you keep it 100? 0 to 100. Show me how you want it. Some people never have trouble. That's why they don't know what the struggle is. I don't pay the cost, and they don't the boss. Analyze my losses. Now I'm taking off. Yeah, I'm a beast. Now I'm unleashed. Ready to feast. Peace, not the least. I think that I'm number one. Just to keep it 100. 0 to 100. So you have a opponent. Are you a beast? Are you unleashed? You ready to feast? Or do you want peace? Not the least. Do you think you're number one? Can you keep it 100?
This is done via a powerful charged-up rune strike. Once the armor is destroyed, Avil can then dismember the limb underneath. Dismembering limbs like this builds energy which Avil will need to ultimately be able to strike the finishing blow. And as you can see, this ogre is none too happy about the loss of its leg, and Avil has to dodge its attacks while also trying to remove the remaining armor in order to get to the limbs beneath them. This is an extremely dangerous situation to be in, because if any of these blows actually manages to hit Avil, it will be death in a single hit. Having now absorbed enough power and weakened the ogre sufficiently, Avil's now ready to go ahead and strike the finishing blow. Using the traversal options we showed off earlier, Avil is able to climb up the ogre's back, take out its helmet, and deliver the coup de grace. That was a relatively easy fight against a relatively basic opponent, but not all enemies are so simple. Depending on what armor, weapons, and abilities they have, each ogre presents its own unique challenges, and requires different strategies and tactics to take down. Here, we have an example of an ogre decked out in gold armor. This armor does open up some new traversal options for Avil, but as you can see, it's also much harder to remove. Each piece is protected by multiple latches that must be destroyed in order to remove it. 4 of them on each leg piece, and 2 on each arm piece. Having finally destroyed all the latches, Avil is now able to dismember the first of this ogre's legs. Moving on to the arms, however, is now much more difficult, as they are constantly moving, making it hard to target those tiny latches. Avil must dodge the ogre's attacks and their minions' attacks while doing this. It has now taken sufficiently long to take down this ogre that its leg has regenerated, and it stood back up. But it no longer matters. Flush with energy from his last kill, Avil is ready. He climbs up the back of the ogre and is presented with one final challenge: staying up there long enough to take out its remaining armor. First, he removes the helmet, and then the collar. With these two obstacles out of the way and its neck exposed, Avil can finally go in for the kill, and so the second ogre falls.
Touch me like I'm an ordinary man. Have a look in my eyes. Underneath my skin there is a violence. It's got a gun in its hands, ready to make sense of anyone, anything, anyone, anything, anyone, anything, anyone, anything, anyone, anything, anyone, anything, anyone,
Positioning and management of different resources. The stamina bar regulates your melee moves and dodges, the blood bar controls the use of your supernatural abilities, and the health bar represents your health. There are many areas to explore, loot, and pick up information to learn about the world, its lore, and what happened to London since disease spread. At the beach, we're fighting people operating under the head of the vampire hunter's orders. The Pruin guards are investigating this beach, searching for Skulls.
Stay close, keep an eye on each other.
Skulls are a lesser species of vampires lurking in quarantine areas, underground or in dark corners. Due to the Spanish flu epidemic, they have suffered heavy mutations and have recently become very aggressive. It's part of your quest to understand how they became such creatures and ultimately find a cure to save them. In this world, the human vampire hunters and Skulls are having their own fight. As long as we don't get too close, we can just move on. Sean is a saint who manages a night asylum to provide food and rest to the poorest. Unfortunately, he has recently turned into a Skull. You believe that, incapable of dealing with his new condition, he has fled from the hospital, a sacred ground, and murdered Harriet Jones, an old woman who certainly didn't deserve it. Most importantly, he is the pillar of the dock community, which means he's a very important character whose fate will deeply impact the district and everyone who lives within it.
Are you certain you're not lost, sir? You seem quite a stranger to these parts.
Our exploration, social manipulation, and skills in combat have led us to where Sean has been hiding. We must find out the truth about the hospital's murders.
Hey!
You are a warrior. I can see that. You trained your whole life for this. And you have won battles that lesser men have called unwinnable, yes? But while you were sharpening your sword, Do you know how I prepared for today? I learned. I know your language, your traditions, your beliefs, which villages to tame and which to burn. So I'll ask you once again, Samurai. Do you surrender?
These, he's going to be able to use that kind of context as one of he's going to play that as part of his strategy for how he approaches any encounter.
Gotcha.
But definitely sound, right? Because like you saw in the media showcase demo, Deacon, put down this bear trap and then kind of snuck off.
Right.
And in our alternate path demo, he doesn't do that. So he actually kind of goes around and watches what happens when this Marauder goes into the bear trap, and you hear this gunshot on the media showcase demo. If you look at our alternate path footage, you'll see that one of the Marauders actually shoots the other Marauder in the head because he's making too much noise.
Oh, wow.
Right? So yeah, so it's a pretty harsh world, but that sound traveled, and sound is something that can be really, really dangerous.
Gotcha. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, I did notice once the bear trap was down and the guy stepped in it, you saw the freakers running.
Yeah.
It's like they heard it screaming. You heard them screaming.
This is looking good. I didn't see all of this footage. I was kind of a little distracted last night during the showcase, but one of the things I really like about this game is it's, we see a lot of open world games out there. It's certainly like a popular genre, but this one, the feel of it is different. It feels more improvisational, I think is the word I'm going for.
Absolutely. Our crafting system, I mean, it's really inspired by, kind of the do-it-yourself mentality where, we all feel thrilled when we make a repair to our car or our house with duct tape and a couple of loose screws, and we feel really good about it. That's Deacon. He's making use of everything he can find in the environment, and they have to scavenge and search for things and employ them in really clever ways.
And he has to do it.
He has to do it to survive.
So like you see right here, this is the same clothesline that Deacon ran into, and in this demo, the runners aren't chasing him, so basically he has the opportunity to see the ambush before it happens, goes around it, comes up behind them, and takes those guys out from behind.
Right.
So, that's, to your point.
And then he strangles them with their own clothesline, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So he makes use of the whole buffalo in this
And it's
game.
a dynamic event. That can happen. You can be out in the world doing a job or a mission, and then suddenly you've got Marauders that are ambushing you on the highway, and it's a dynamic event. There's no way to predict when it's going to happen. You just got to pay attention.
Well, is there more than just like a clothesline in the middle? Do they find more ways to ambush you?
Yeah,
it's a dangerous world, and it's something where the Horde is dangerous, Freakers are dangerous, but so too are humans because they're cunning and clever, and they too are using everything they can find to employ against their enemies. And let's just say clothesline is one of many things. We'll get into it at a later date.
Okay.
Now tell me a little bit about, maybe a little bit of the backstory about why these freakers are being hung up like this. Is that like a defense mechanism? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so what they do is we call it the meat wall. And what they'll do is, like in this case, they have a bear trap under this dead freaker corpse. And what they'll do is they'll put a trap under it, and then as other freakers are attracted to the meat, they're all hungry all the time. That's what happens, evidently, if you become a freaker. But they hang up the meat walls again. It's kind of like a wall to protect the encampment. So you can always tell when you're coming close to a Marauder camp because you'll run into these kinds of traps.
Yeah, they had all kinds of defenses too. I mean, the first thing Deacon did was trip over that little thing in the tin cans, and that's what drew the first guy out, which is why he'd think on his toes, scramble for a bush, and then wait, and then kill the guy when he came by.
Right.
And again, in the alternate path that we're showing, it's something where if the players are thoughtful and if they take time, they don't just rush into things, they're going to be able to employ a different analysis of the terrain. They're going to be able to look for these things and see them. And that's how he sees a close.